UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military black projects, false flag alien invasion psyop, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join UFO historian Don Ecker, MUFON State Director for New York Chris DePerno, retired veteran pilot Commander Cobra, and well-esteemed host and researcher Martin Willis as they discuss the latest news and topics regarding UAPs with a no-holds-barred approach on UAP Crossfire.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our third edition of UAP Crossfire. My name is Don Ecker, and joining me is Mr. Chris DePerno in the upper left, Mr. Martin Willis, upper right, and Commander Cobra on my immediate left.
Gentlemen, gobble.
It's gobble for sure. It's a genuine pleasure to be back with all of you. Okay, today we are going to take another look at what is currently ongoing as we do this broadcast. Gentlemen, before we go any further, do any of you have anything you'd like to start off with? Chris?
I do.
I do,
Commander?
too. Wait your turn. I just want to say what a great background you got, Commander. I'm going to call you Dagger 1 from now on. I mean, that is fantastic and stuff. When I first saw it, I go, holy cow, how did you get that done? Then I saw Tom Cruise's helmet in the background. Good job.
Yeah. There's Tom. Everybody wave to Tom. He's in the back seat.
As he should be.
You're Rio.
Wizzo. Yeah.
Wizzo?
Yeah.
Who gives
these airplanes,
shit?
it would be a Wizzo. Yeah.
Okay, Commander, you had something?
I do. Given the day that we have, I wanted to, and that we all have roots. All of us have roots to the New England region, which is obviously the strong basis of this holiday. I wanted to read something to you all. In the first documented UFO sighting in America dates back to 1639, when Massachusetts Bay Colony co-founder and governor John Winthrop recorded a secondhand observation of unidentified objects in the sky over Boston. In his diary entry of March 1st that year, Winthrop wrote that a sober, this is a quote, direct, discreet man named James Everall was rowing a boat up the muddy river at night when he saw a great light in the sky. Winthrop reports that it was when it stood still, it flamed up. And it was about 3 yards square. When it ran, it was contracted into the figure of a swine, as it ran as swift as an arrow towards Charlestown, or Charlton in those days, and so up and down for about 2 to 3 hours. By the time the lights moved away, Everett and his boatmates had been delivered 1 mile upstream, although they had no memory of how. Just thought I'd throw that out there. There's some other interesting ones that come up from New England. If time permits, I will add that as pumpkin spice to our proceedings today.
I wonder if they had like missing time in the hourglass type of thing.
The missing sands.
Yeah, interesting.
That's the first recorded one in New England and in the colonies by obviously by the settlers. I think if you go into Native American indigenous people records, there are much earlier descriptions.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't seen anything with the Norse Viking explorations for this part of the country in that. I've looked for stuff in the past, but I've never seen that. But I thought, in keeping with our holiday, and it is better to give than to receive, I thought I'd give a little bit today.
Wow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very impressive.
Yeah. Martin, do you have anything you'd like to start with?
Well, let's see. A lot seems to be happening. I know we're pre-recording this show, so everything we say is dated, but there seems to be some interesting things going on in the UAP UFO world. You know, I mean, I don't know about you all, but I seem to get a lot of comments from people about, for instance, a reveal supposedly of a higher intelligence person, Katsky, is that his name? Saying that there was that the U.S. is in possession of some type of non-human craft. They gained the interior. No, there's no found source of propulsion or fuel or anything like that, which wouldn't surprise me, you know, in the least, if there could be nothing that would be noticeable that would propel these things. I mean, they're so strange. They're in general. So I think that is interesting. And then I don't know if any of you caught this. We there was a cube and a sphere. That's what in our possession. Like Ryan Graves reported recently. I had a deep sea diver that actually he's an adventurer, Scott Cassell, who claimed that he had a cube that was reacting to him during one of his times underwater. He has 15,000 hours of underwater experience, and this was quite an amazing thing. So there's a lot that is kind of unusual if we actually have that cube and sphere and we're able to get inside of it. I mean, if that's really the truth of it, that would be pretty amazing. Maybe it's the sphere itself that propels it. I don't know. So that's what I'm thinking of, and grateful for another year here and Thanksgiving and all that stuff. My favorite holiday.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, let me throw something out to you. Now, in this field of UFO, UAP research, investigation, the one constant that I have observed during my entire professional career in this field, and even before when I was simply an interested amateur, is the smoke, the mirrors, the innuendo, the rumor, and quite frankly, the disinformation that has come at us in heaps and bounds. I got to tell you, when I hear stories like this cube, and I'm not discounting that, but when I hear stories like that, I wonder how much of that was basically propaganda put out by quote unquote the powers that be. One of the great items that has transfixed me in this field since the mid 1980s was seeing how the military intelligence and civilian intelligence agencies have manipulated the data. I go back, for example, to the mid 1980s when UFO researcher, writer, broadcaster Linda Moulton Howe was basically working on a very fascinating program at the time for one of the network shows. HBO, as a matter of fact, is who it was.
Remember?
She was contacted by someone later totally identified as a Air Force military disinformation agent, a fellow by the name of Richard Doty, who strung Howe along, and this has happened a number of times with other people like Robert Emenegger, okay, where they were promised if they worked hand in glove with these people, they would be permitted to see some top secret videos, film that had been shot by the military. And at the very last second, this was snatched away from them. With subsequently, Howe's project was torpedoed, okay? They do this time and again. And even today, all these years later, since 2017, we've had that dangle out there. promising more and more and more disclosure. Well, let's be honest. Right now, today, what do we have as proof? We virtually have nothing. Okay, we have,
well, at least in the public forum, we
well,
definitely.
that's obviously that's
Right.
where you and I and all of us are. But we have nothing but second and third hand excuse me, information. So I ask you all, each of you, are we any further along than we were, 5 years ago?
Well, I'm going to take one
Chris?
quick stab. I'm going to take one quick stab at this. Then, Chris, I think the level of interference and the level of overload that is coming into this now indicates to me, and I think, Don, if you look back at your time working in Intel, this says that the ability to control the information or control the finding or some portion of the reveal must be closer, because the way this is being presented and the kind of overload of information that's being thrown out there is a difference from the 60s and 70s, 80s, when the active engagement of taking out people that were in the field doing real, what I would consider accurate research and presenting findings in a logical way. So I think we're closer in the fact that the ability to control this from the public is slipping a bit.
Chris?
Well, I'm going to throw something out there because there's, first of all, I want to go back to an interview that Commander Cobra and I were on a show together, and it was with Kevin Day. And Commander says, "I believe these Tic Tacs are ours." And at first I went, I don't know about that. Then I started researching what he said about that, and I started looking at this thing, and I go, if the government wanted to cover this up, or the government had plans for this, what a perfect way to put this out there, saying that this technology is not ours, it's UFOs, it's unidentified aerial phenomenons. And then I watched their narrative from going from, we don't believe in these things, there's no proof, to all of a sudden, they're a threat. Now, just bear with me for a second, because now we're saying, here are these things in the air. We know they're there. We believe now that they're a threat. Now, let's say Commander is absolutely right. What I think he is, that they're ours. But we want to hide this technology until the right time. So now we have Martin Willis interviewing Gary Nolan. And Gary Nolan is saying, yeah, these things are causing physical injury to pilots and everything else that are happening. So they have to investigate this and look at what's causing the damage. Now, let's say this stuff is ours, and we're going to use it at a certain time and place. But when we want to use it, we want to put a false flag out there and say the aliens attacked. So let's say we bomb Iran with Tic Tacs. Hear me out, but think about this. If we use Tic Tacs and we took out their oil reservoirs and stuff with those type of technology that we deny, can we put the narrative out that it was aliens that did it, that's trying to save our planet? What a plausible deniability. We denied this technology, and if we have it, what a perfect way to put it out there. And if we're going to use it, we're in the brink of World War III. What a better place to put it out and put a false flag out there. I wanted to throw that out to the group.
Interesting.
Martin, do you have any?
Well, on that point, do you, I guess I'll ask this of Commander, do you really think that we could have some type of technology at that reported G-force that would hold itself together and not, come apart? I mean, I forget what the G-force is supposed to be, if all the data is correct, of the thing dropping how many thousand, 60,000 feet, whatever, in less than a second type of thing. Do you think that we could even have something that would hold together? Or is this, do we have such advanced technology that we can't even imagine it? I mean, what makes you feel so certain that this could be what we're looking at?
Uh, Here's the short list on how I answer that. If you look at the background of my screen, the beautiful airbending F-18 E and F model, and that is how we're scoring the technology. Now, I think I sent all of you in a separate email chat. If I didn't, in my heart I did, showing a new aviation technology that's out that none of the control surfaces that are used on a air breathing and an aircraft that uses the physics of moving the air and lift around its body will have the normal control surfaces. It's going to all be operated from changing basically the field around the aircraft. There's no rivet lines. There's none of the flight controls that are on the present airplanes of this day. It's a new test aircraft that's coming out. And of course, it's very attractive because if you don't have that, then you have less drag. You can get more speed, and it uses an advanced technology to basically use electricity and other ways to change the airflow around the aircraft. But you're still changing airflow, but it's a big change. So we are still judging what we see by what we know and what we experience. It's very much like the discussion I got into with someone about how Tom Cruise could have possibly survived the opening of the latest Top Gun Maverick in the Mach 10 departure. And to me, it's pretty easily why they left it out showing anything. But technology that had developed in the 50s and 60s for the capsule to go and how rapidly the aircraft would decelerate, that would give the pilot a chance to survive. So back to the Tic Tac. If you are willing to suspend or at least entertain that there may be other technologies involved here, then you're changing things like how are the occupants, if there are occupants in the aircraft, and I think they are in this particular, an aircraft may not be the proper term to use, this vehicle, where it is using a gravitational field that establishes a very comfortable and survivable environment within that. So when you talk about things like sphere within the cube or cube within the sphere, that has kind of a realm of lining up. It also explains to me why so few of these show up, given that they're probably very much in a research nature. I doubt very much, Chris, that they would use them in something like an attack, a very visible attack, only because they're probably not capable of being mission capable. I think they're showing and demonstrating. It's much like the X-15, the fastest aircraft that ever existed, set records that no other aircraft, truly the precipice of going up to the edge of hyperspace. It's not a hypersonic, but it was near hypersonic aircraft. That aircraft could never do anything in a technology capability. Hold on.
Go ahead.
So let me get the rest of the point up. So when you look at Tic Tac, what really threw me off on this is that it approaches a carrier battle group, and it approaches a carrier battle group in the daytime. It is seen, it engages, there's a lot of activity. I interviewed some of the folks that were in the carrier battle group back on my show that talked about what they had seen, how the tapes were taken a hold of for recordings that they made. It has all the hallmarks of kind of running a test and also kind of running a demo. And the demo isn't so much for us as it is for potential adversaries. We do this from time to time. Other nations do this from time to time when you position forces or capabilities. This may have used up every capability of that particular aircraft. It may have been so expensive, it may have been so demanding that particular craft was not able to fly again, and you do the next one. But it's this very public demonstration to keep everybody off. If you ever study how the Manhattan Project was put together, how they were putting it together, the secrecy they kept with it, the things that they did allow to sneak out because they wanted the potential to be understood by the enemy during World War II, it follows that kind of a pattern. And the last part that tells me why you may not see this technology break out is because it's too disruptive to the status quo. We talk about military industrial complex, military, industrial. You can put in a whole bunch of different terms. I've heard everything from pharmaceuticals to banking, industrial complex as well that's in there. If you were to have this technology and change it, what's it going to do to the rest of the world's capability? If we were able to get off oil tomorrow, would people be willing to do that? Because there's much money that is made by producing oil and petroleum-based products. There is always that consideration that you're fighting against the folks that have their hand on the lever and don't want to remove their hand from the lever or have an industry taken out.
Well, wait a minute, Commander.
But
we have people right now that are working nonstop to knock us off the oil economy.
I don't agree
with oil.
Don, I don't agree with you. They're not. They're not doing that. If they were seriously doing that, they would have come out with an electrical grid improvement upgrade over the last 10, 20 years. What we're doing now.
The people you have now that are doing that
haven't
Don, looked
that
far.
I'm not saying that's. No, I understand what you're saying, and that's in the political realm. I'm talking from the purest look at this. The folks that are making money do not want to not make money. That transition will happen when they are ready to move over to it. You see activity in things like trying to go to an electrical, non-petroleum-based, non-fossil fuel grid, supplied electricity, because right now, no one who has a clue would believe that coal is not powering electric vehicles in a very inefficient way to taking that energy. If we really believed what you were saying and it was organized and people were going to make money, things like the nuclear industry would not be occurring. They wouldn't have gone the way that they did. So no, I don't agree with you on that. And the final, final point, and then I'll defer to the gentleman from California. These vehicles may be greatly physically demanding on the people that are around them and in operating them. And I take back to a number of the occasions where things like Rendlesham, where there was encounters with the craft there and the kinds of physical ailments that have come out from that. And I believe that is probably the other part of it. You have this, but it's coming at great cost. I can tell you that folks that fly things like the SR-71 when it was flying, the U-2 that is still flying, those pilots take incredible amount of physical damage, physical abuse for flying those aircraft to perform those missions. And that is fairly traditional physics that we're using in them. So when you bring in these other technologies, they may not have perfected. I yield the floor back to my fellow hosts.
Well, okay. Out here in California right now, the governor has declared that by 2035, okay, California will no longer permit gasoline-powered vehicles to be in the state. Now, I'm sure they have to grandfather the vehicles that are already here. But with that being said, there's been a push to do away with all other types of fossil fuels. Gasoline-powered lawnmowers, they want to make verboten. Weed blowers, gasoline-powered, they want to make verboten. Okay. Natural gas stoves and ovens, they want to make verboten. They want to get rid of them. And do what? Well, make everything electrical. Okay? The problem is, if there's anybody in the United States of America today, all 50 states, that is less prepared for an electrical, the California grid can't handle what we have now. 2.5 years ago, for a solid year, I documented it, okay? It's one of the things that caused me to go out and buy another generator. We were losing power because of the grid. It was so antiquated. The grid was breaking down a number of times monthly. We would go anywhere from 4 hours to 2 or 3 days without any electricity. But yet they're pushing electrical vehicles. My stepson has an electrical vehicle, okay? The problems with that thing are enormous. The technology is not yet there to be sustainable, okay? But they keep pushing it. Now, what powers these things? Well, of course, the electrical grid. And where does the power go? In their lithium batteries. Where does the lithium come from? Okay? It's practically all foreign, coming from Africa or China, our sworn enemy. What happens if things go even worse than they are now? And the Chinese decide, well, we're going to shut off your pharmaceuticals because the pharmaceuticals swim to the United States from China. We're going to knock off all your junk stuff that we make, that everybody buys. Every damn thing I have here, okay? And I've been recently checking. Made in China. Everything is made in China. You very seldom ever see anything made in the USA. We are vulnerable today to this potential tyranny like we've never been vulnerable before. I yield the floor.
No disagreement, Don. I just don't agree on the premise that this showboating to go to an electrical driven economy is serious, because we haven't outlawed oil companies. The said politicians that you're referring to take huge amounts of money from oil corporations that are international corporations that continue to get oil from other parts, not the United States, not making us energy independent. I understand all that. But the question was why I believed the Tic Tac, US based, why it's a capability we have. I tried to outline to you the parts and pieces of this. And one of those tenets that I use is this technology is so disruptive that the Boeings and the Northrops and everyone else that's out there cannot either afford or compete with this kind of change in technology. And this has happened in the past. Yep. There has been places where we have been very slow to make the transition, because those that are controlling and making money on the market will, until they get a position that they can control in the next market, are not going to give it up.
But do you think there'd be a difference between peacetime, what you're saying, which I agree with, but if we enter a wartime and we're on the brink of a World War III? Well, first off, let me just address Martin. Martin, Michael Schratt has come out and say he has information. He believes that we have conquered anti-gravity. We have equipment. We have the Aurora. We have the Black Manta and stuff that is anti-gravity. And he has convinced me that stuff is real. And so who is the U2 historian? James McDougal, what's his name? He's done all the U2.
I think you're talking about McDonald, yeah.
McDonald, okay. McDonald has told me that we have conquered, a long time ago, Mach 14, which is pretty significant. I mean, and this was years ago, we have conquered that. Now, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying in a peacetime situation. But like in World War II, when we took atomic energy and created a bomb with it, if we are threatened that bad, and we go on the theory that the Tic Tac is ours, that some of these things that we see in the sky are ours, wouldn't we use it in wartime? Not peacetime, but in wartime.
So, Chris, there's only one way I can respond to you on this. Why do you think that the rules by which you are judging our activity from World War II are still in place now? What fantasy world do you live in that you don't think international governments, international corporations have compromised every government on this planet?
Because they want to survive too.
No, they don't. They are convinced they will survive. Those that have got their hands on the levers. The rest of us can stand around and hope enough electrons come down that we can choose that we're going to cook our lab-grown food electrically, or we get to throw a couple trons into the battery so that we can maybe drive. You're applying a rule set that I can't understand why you would think, since World War II, that the game is being played the same way.
No, the game is not being played the same. I agree with you there. But what I'm saying to you is that there's an instinct of survival. And
All right.
if these industrial people think they're not going to survive,
but they don't. Why do you think that they don't? How can someone making multiple billions in money, salaries in multiple millions, stand there and say, sorry, I'm not giving up any of that money. You're not getting a pay raise. So long, Detroit, and throw it into a strike. Thankfully, that has ended. And now cars will cost more. We've fallen further behind in producing cars in the country, and we're going to buy more foreign or use more foreign labor to produce those cars on jobs. Now, you wouldn't do that if you're running a corporation, right?
Do you believe we produce disinformation, right? The government puts out false flag. And
absolutely.
Okay.
The crux of what we're talking about.
All right. So do you believe that there's a chance that there is industrialists want a new world order? Do they not? Okay.
No doubt.
So what would be a perfect thing to do is to put out, and we've seen this. We've seen people talk about this, experts talk about this. What a perfect way to take our technology, put a false flag out and say the UFOs attacked this. What a perfect thing.
You're kind of skewing off the line with me a little bit on this. There is absolute refinable case that the government, our government, the United States government, has used the UFO interest and enthusiasm since the 50s to cover up operations.
Yes.
SR-71s were told, and people from Project Blue Book, people that wore blue Air Force uniforms, went into conferences and gatherings and inserted information into it to use that cause, to use that interest to cover the activities, because the greater good was we did not want the enemy to know what our capabilities were. We had that one particular aircraft, the SR-71, for almost 12 years before we fessed up that we had it. Publicly fessed up that we had the aircraft because of its capabilities.
And why wouldn't they use the same narrative again?
There was a CIA historian by the name of Haynes that back in the 60s tried to suggest that a lot of these UFO sightings that people were seeing were in fact experimental aircraft like the SR-71 and the U-2. Now, in between trips to Vietnam, I was in Okinawa. They were flying SR-71s out of Kadena Air Force Base. I've seen these things take off, and I've seen them go into the sky where in seconds, basically, they become virtually invisible. They were going so high up into the sky. And these missions were flying along North Vietnam, China, North Korea. They were gathering intelligence by the ton, okay? Now, these aircraft, as Commander pointed out, well, these are old aircraft. My God, the SR-71, prior to that, the A-12, they were 1950s technology. And speaking about 50s technology, I'll never forget, because Donald Kehoe, who was the former chairman of the NICAP Committee, the National Investigative Committee on Aerial Phenomenon, detailed the last public press briefing that Dr. Herman Oberth gave before the Pentagon swallowed him up. This was circa about 1958. And he was being queried by news reporters, where he basically said on the record that we are working on anti-gravity technology now, and I'm paraphrasing, and within several years, this should take us to the moon. Now, gentlemen, we did go to the moon in 1969, but we went to the moon on chemical rockets. What the hell happened to that anti-gravity research that Oberth was discussing in 1958? That's over 60 years ago. So yeah, I have no doubt we have that technology. They've been keeping it vastly under wraps.
Well, Martin, you started this. I tried to make my case.
Well, just a couple things. According to Kevin Day, it was raining Tic Tacs, UFOs. Maybe up to 60, I believe he said something like that. So it's not just like this single thing you mentioned. It might be, in a very expensive situation. And if that's the case, why would they? And they were only using one or two around the ship. Around the fighter jets. So what would be the purpose of having all these things floating around if there were that many? If we had that technology and it was very expensive to have and to operate or whatever. Secondly, it seems like everyone is under the consensus that this is going back close to 20 years now, that we could keep the lid on this type of technology. I guess I would be outvoted by those of you who say that we could do this. We could keep the lid on it. I'm rather surprised, if that's the case, that our adversaries at least didn't get a hold of, this type of technology, if that's what's going on. So anyway, that's my endpoint at this point.
Well, let me interject this. And I was basically there when George Knapp broke the story of Dennis, who had worked at Area 51. Dennis, of course, became Bob Lazar. Yeah. All right. And almost immediately, stories started to float about, at that time, there was still a Soviet Union, that Soviet agents had snowed Las Vegas and Nevada under, attempting to find out exactly what was going on out there. Now, of course, we all know that the Area 51 facility is where things like the SR-71 and other aircraft were being tested. Now, as to whether they had recovered alien technology, bodies, live aliens, who knows? But the Russians were swarming all over it. And I personally was told by some people, and I kind of, at the time, I figured it was probably disinformation, but I was told that they were using, the powers that be at Area 51, were using the UFO ET label to basically cover up what they were really doing, which was very terrestrial technology advancements. What do you guys think about that? Now, there's no doubt there were a hell of a lot of Russian agents down there, KGB, what have you. Gentlemen?
Well, Martin, let me jump in real quick, Chris, and I'll be short.
Sure.
I want to answer one point that you made. Just recently at the Air Force Museum, they have brought in a new display of Su-27s. That is a Russian aircraft. Very, very interesting story about the aircraft. They went from being in one of the satellite countries, one of those spheres, sold to private warbird enthusiasts. You got to have some pretty good coin to grab these jets and get them flying. They then were bought by various holding companies in the United States and ended up flying with the United States Air Force in a very advanced program. And many of you are familiar with the Red Eagles program. It was covered up in depth many, many times, considering why we would have other aircraft technologies. There were a number of Navy and Air Force pilots that would go out to Nellis and fly against these aircraft to get them prepared for combat with them for this dissimilar air combat against the actual aircraft. That was a very well kept secret, and there was a lot of people and a lot of moving parts in it. And there was a lot of other disinformation, some of it being, as Don has indicated, on the UFO phenomena that has covered this up. So if a secret needs to be kept, it will be kept. And the interesting thing about this Su-27, it just came out and everybody's talking, and people have grabbed the numbers and they've traced it. But within days of that announcement, there is now reports that up to 30, 40, even more than that of these type of aircraft have been produced. And I will throw in there that one of my lifelong crazy things that I have chased down, a very good friend of mine who tragically passed away, Marine fighter pilot, and then fantastic author, not just because he put my character in one of his books. That's not the reason. He wrote a book about during Vietnam, the United States was using captured MiGs with U.S. pilots to fly in behind the lines to join up and to shoot down and disrupt the operations of the enemy. And to me, it always captured my attention on that. And I've often wondered how many times that has been repeated. There are actual cases during World War I where the French Air Force used a German airplane that they had captured with changeable rondelles so that when they were over France, they had the right markings. And then when they got into Germany, they would retract those. The Germans would think that it was a friendly airplane. They'd fly and do whatever they were doing, bomb or crudely go after the other aircraft. Just a quick aside that I wanted to thread. Martin, I think if the secret needs to be kept, it will be. And when you're starting to lose control, then you start throwing out all the other things. And I think that's what's happening. I think that's what's happening with our UAP issue. I think that's why it's generated. And it's a go-to playbook for a long, long time that's been used and used a lot. Sorry, Chris.
No, I first of all, I wanted to say that I want to piggyback on that and say I watched in 1974 a cell phone being used. Saved our lives. So and nobody knew what a cell phone was back in 1974. Never even heard about it. But I was sitting on the third floor of an embassy when the chief of station for one of those 3-letter agencies came out and actually used one. It was a big box kind of one, but it was
very
a cell
classy
phone.
Though. I remember having one of those. You thought you were pretty cool when you had that shoebox worth of technology and the antenna that shot up.
Yeah, but this is back in
phone receiver. Yeah, but
my first cell was a Radio Shack brick.
Right.
Yeah, you're a badass. I've
had
that.
This was being used in 1974, and we all kind of went, my mouth dropped open and went, what the hell is that? And sure enough, so I will say that when the certain things are put in play, secrets can be kept, because as we know, they'll kill to keep those secrets. Especially we've now heard with the ufology secrets, perhaps they've done that. So secrets could be kept that way.
All I can say is go back and reread my disclosure paper.
I agree.
I covered all of that in there, and it's frightening, quite frankly.
Well, the whole thing is frightening because if Commander Cobra, which I believe his Tic Tac thing is true, and Martin, if Kevin Day says there were 60 of them, we may have a whole Air Force of these things. Remember, we talk at times about a secret space force, that there's plenty of ships in space. If that's true, Tic Tacs are nothing compared to these cylinders and these triangles and, everything else that is starting to leak out. We got a space force. How sophisticated it is, I don't know, but a lot of ufologists talk about saying there's Gary McKenna who talks about this stuff. Mm-hmm. So this, what we think is maybe out of the box, maybe actually in the box kind of a deal.
Martin, quick question I want to ask you. I'm a huge fan of Tesla. And to this day, there's never been a really good accounting of what happened to him, as he died, penniless, suffering from dementia, and all his files and paperwork were confiscated. Not made public record, not available. I'm sure hidden in the archives with all the other really, fun stuff that's hidden in the archives that the rest of us will never get a chance to see. The things that he talked about for the extraction of power, the ability to tap power that was available and an almost celestial basis for it has gone away. I mean, he battled with Edison, who Edison thinks, everyone thinks I think he's one of the most horrible people that ever lived. The things that he did to prove his point when his point was wrong is, to me, the model of where we have gone down the road of damnation one too many times. So to answer you why as many as 60 could be flying, I think if you look at what is now being touted as the incredible world that we're living in, you're going to have the manned fighter or bomber airplane, and you're going to have unmanned aircraft that accompany it using AI and automation to protect that airplane, perform the mission, do that. You may have been seeing the dry run. You may have been seeing the basis of that. I will always say this. Tic Tac, in my opinion, yes, is something that we own and control. What it was inspired by may be extraterrestrial recovery. Wouldn't surprise me in the least that that's part of it, and why the difficulty of making it on a large number, and a lot of other things. But to me, it must be expensive, it must be dangerous, and it must be causing a lot of tipping point balance that people want to try to control the tipping balance.
Well, gentlemen, several years ago on the History Channel, there was a series that ran for a couple of years called Unidentified. And the hosts on that included rock and roller Tom DeLonge. How he got involved in that, God only knows. But there were some heavy hitters in there. Dr. Hal Puthoff, formerly and probably currently a CIA scientist. There was Lou Elizondo, and we all have our own opinion on how real or not real he was. But then there was Christopher Mellon. Now, I can't think of the guy's name that was there from the Lockheed Skunk Works, but he was there too. But Christopher Mellon was an undersecretary of state for intelligence, worked with all the military's intelligence agencies. And I got to tell you, with my foray into this field, going back into the late 80s, the early 90s, I butted heads with all those guys. I butted heads with the DOD, the Pentagon. I butted heads with NASA, all these naysayers at the time. And suddenly, here is this guy from the rarefied atmosphere, all right, an undersecretary of state, talking positively about the UFO UAP phenomenon. Now, I never would have believed it. Gave me heart palpitations for a while. But the one thing that they did for those couple of years they were on the air, every program, every one, they emphasized a potential threat from these objects, these mysterious machines. That was in every episode, a possible threat. Now, at the time, I put on my detective hat, and I thought about that for a long time. And I thought, okay, this can only be one of a couple of possibilities. And I want your feedback on this. Number one, this is the biggest dog and pony sex show in the history of propaganda emanating from the Pentagon. Or maybe they are genuinely aware of something coming down the road toward us, and sooner or later, the public is going to catch on. Now, I got to say, today, I kind of have doubts about a large segment of our population catching on. But with that being said, okay, gentlemen, where do you come down on that? I'm sure you've all seen these episodes of Unidentified, and what's your feeling about it? Chris, I'm going to start with you.
I'm just watched their narrative change. Like you said, they've gone from unbelievable deniers for 70 years to turn around saying they're real, to turn around saying they're a threat. And like you're saying, I think something is coming down the pike, that they're building a narrative for that to take place, so it doesn't catch any. People go, well, this is not a big deal. They've been telling this for years. So we know the government manipulates the narrative. We know the government manipulates different things to their benefit, to other people's benefits that control the government, the puppet masters who control the puppets. And so this has been kind of shocking to me. So one of the things, as I pointed out, is that maybe, just maybe, they would use this in a false flag operation, and they're preparing us for that.
Okay. Martin?
Well, I'm wondering if these things, if they were real, are they just stuck in like the private sector without any oversight at all? I mean, it seems like, I know it would be a top secret situation, but when we get into all this, these hearings and these things that involve, people looking into the UAP, UFO topic, are these things, are we just going to go with the status quo that the Tic Tac is unidentifiable in the video? We have no idea what it was. I will let David Fravor and Alex Dietrich speak their pieces and just move on like nothing's happening here.
Yep.
And they know all this technology, and there's some part of the government that's keeping it from the rest of the government that is looking into this. I guess that's my curiosity of it all.
Okay, and we only have a couple of minutes before we go to break, but Commander Cobra, what's your take on it?
Well, Don, you put a beautiful spectrum out there, and I can land and see the light receive the signal of the frequency on that spectrum. From the dog and pony show part of it, absolutely. I think that this is bread and circus. This is nothing new. This is keep the masses entertained, not paying attention. And then when you need to, you use it for whatever purposes to maintain order, calm, control, what it ultimately comes down to. The other part is the growing appearance that we are headed towards something and headed to an event we might not control. And in between those 2 points, if you want to have more money in a budget, then you say we have a threat. That's what global warming is about. That's a threat. So we're going to use that to change the way people live or what they're able to get access to, change freedoms or what we want. If there's a threat coming from the skies and we build that up, then we're able to do that. You lay out a very perfect spectrum that you can find, I think, enough proof that it fits in there. And I have always been one that is very doubtful of government. It is, as I've said in the past many times, I follow Bismarck on this particular one. I'm not much for the German statesman, but Bismarck got it best. Maybe the perfect way on this day to go to the break. The more I find out about what goes into sausage in government, the less I like both. Martin, you bring up a great point. Private sector used to be private. It is almost indistinguishable now how the private sector and the government work. There isn't that kind of separation. Things like World War II and the way it concluded changed everything for mankind. You had things like the Rand Corporation, where the government went and grabbed the smartest people they could find in industry and created that outfit that produced guiding documents how the government was going to conduct affairs. The famous one, I think, out of those studies that we often talk about was if the announcement of aliens or extraterrestrials existed, world religions would collapse, the economies would collapse, and there would be total disorder. Amazing.
Well, right? Commander Cobra, the first thing I will do, if in fact that happens, is pull out my wallet and check to see what I have in it. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to break. We have more when we get back. Remember, keep those eyes pointed up. And as promised, we are back. You know, during the break, I got to tell you, I had a number of thoughts. And yeah, Commander, they did hurt. But I had a number of thoughts run through my mind. And last night, as we do this recorded show, last night I had a special show on my show, Dark Matters Radio. And I was kind of surprised, but somebody's name that popped up was Roy Thinnis, okay, actor, well-known actor, back in the latter 1960s, he had a rather shocking television program on that only ran for about a little over, well, not quite 2 seasons, called The Invaders.
Great show.
And this was about that very thing, hostile extraterrestrials. Now, as it turns out, and this was something I happened to be privy to, as it turns out, before that show premiered, just several days, probably 3 or 4 days before the first episode ran, he was driving down the 405 here in Southern California with his wife. And as she was looking out the car window, she started shouting at Roy, "My God, look, look, look." And it was a UFO. She saw this disc thing flying through the sky, and it shocked her. And she turned to Roy and she said, "Oh my God, who are you going to call to tell about that?" And he looked up, he saw it, and he said, "Nobody." And she said, "Nobody?" He said, "No, if I did it," he said, "nobody would believe it. They would think it was some kind of a propaganda thing or some kind of a thing to juice up the show," which in fact was probably correct. Now, he, as it turns out, was a firm believer in the UFO UAP phenomenon. Of course, back in those days, it was just UFO. And how I know this, my late and very dear departed friend, Richard Saraday, was friends with Roy Thinnis's son. Okay, they used to have coffee together up in Topanga at one of the coffee stores up there. And I tried desperately to get Thinnis on my show to interview him, but he is up there in years now, and he just wasn't interested, which I really bemoaned that fact. I would have loved to have talked to him. But this brought to mind that back when the Invaders were on the air, okay, this, of course, was prior to 1968, Robert Kennedy met Roy Thinnis, and purportedly he pulled out of his wallet a membership card to NICAP. Huh. Kennedy was apparently a member of the National Investigative Committee on Aerial Phenomena. And I found that absolutely mind-boggling. So to say that everybody in government at one point was not on board with this, I don't think would be correct. Gentlemen?
Interesting. Is there any of that verifiable about Kennedy?
I'm trying to remember now, Martin, where I read that, but it was in something years ago. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was in one of Donald Kehoe's books before he was removed as the chairman of NICAP, which, incidentally, for anybody that is interested in the history of this field and the very important part that NICAP played in it, NICAP was apparently infiltrated by former and probably at that time current members of intelligence, and they got rid of Kehoe. He was too much of a loudmouth, I guess. Somebody wanted to shut his cake hole.
He was just not a controllable guy, and that's not what they wanted.
Exactly.
Now, I want to make a quick costume note. You can see my hawk feather. Mrs. Cobra, otherwise known as the sexy little badger, caught me wearing the hoodie and wanted to know why on the Thanksgiving show I wasn't in a more festive hoodie. So I had the hawk feather for you for this portion. I'll be taking it out. I know it's hard to see in the background.
It fades in and out. It's like a shapeshifter.
I like it.
Well, then maybe I'm shapeshifting, Martin. I mean, I would, of all people on this panel, I think you would accept that me being a shapeshifter kind of
Possible.
fits.
Yeah. Possible.
Hey, with Kehoe, wasn't there one time when he was going to really blow the whistle and they cut him off the air?
Oh,
Wasn't there a show that he was going to?
absolutely, yes.
I mean, they
And
shut him down.
you know who that was? Our
No.
old news buddy, Mike Douglas.
Mike,
Now,
wow.
back in the 50s, and I forget now the name of the show. Hang on one second.
The Mike Douglas show?
That was his variety show that was on in the
No,
60s.
he would bring people on there and then score them. Okay, really do a number on them. We have somebody coming in the front door, so if you hear a lot of racket with the dogs or anything, you'll know what the deal is.
Is it terrestrial or extraterrestrial, Don?
Terrestrial?
The country wants to know.
Definitely terrestrial. But at any rate, yeah, and at that time, Mike Douglas used to promote Parliament cigarettes.
Yep.
And they would go to break, and he'd pull a pack of Parliaments out, fire one up, and extol the virtues of smoking Parliaments. But on this particular show with Donald Kehoe, these shows, and this was not known at the time, were all scripted, okay? They had a genuine script they had to follow. And Kehoe went off script to basically say he was working with some congressional representatives to get congressional hearings on the UFO topic. And that was off script, and they cut him off mid-sentence. I mean, just ran the volume all the way down to Neil. And at the time, that created a hell of a big controversy about censorship. And I believe it was CBS that was the network. And then they had one of their spokesmen come out and try to massage the wand about why they had to do this. And it was a crap shoot from the beginning. But one of the people that highlighted that, and this is another name from the past, was radio host out of New York, Long John Neville.
Oh, yeah.
And he had Kehoe on there. And Kehoe, now Kehoe was a gentleman. Okay. He didn't go quite as hardcore as I would have done at that point. Okay. I would have not been shy about blasting all their asses, but Kehoe kind of did it in a nice way. And I always had a problem with that when he would get these people on. Wallace called him a liar. Okay. He said, look, you're talking about 4 documents, and 3 of the documents I checked with Colonel Tacker, I think it was Tacker, Project Blue Book. And Tacker said 3 of those documents don't even exist. And the 4th one does, but it doesn't say what you say it does. And Kehoe didn't wilt, okay, but he disagreed with what Wallace was saying. And then, of course, they moved on to the next thing. So, yeah, he was stabbed in the back big time.
If I could, I'd like to pivot just a little bit and go back to the disclosures that Martin was mentioning, the congressional hearings. What have we really gotten from any of these congressional hearings? I mean, I've seen nothing but big nothing burgers. I watched the guy head of Arrow tell a senator there's no proof that there's extraterrestrials, which we all went, what is he talking about? I watched the head of naval intelligence say we don't have good enough computers to get a still shot of a UFO flying by an airplane. I've watched the Undersecretary of Defense turn around and talk more about his thing with Star Wars than he was about the actual thing. I think a lot of these, other than one congressman really trying to push the issue, and that's Tim Blanchard, I have not seen anything worthwhile at any of these congressional hearings other than the fact that they are mentioning UAPs and UFO to the public, but nothing where they said, we got really great proof. I mean, come on now. The one guy turns around and he says, hey, we took months studying this thing that was flying over one of our battleships or cruisers or whatever, and we come to that this was a remote drone. Now, wait a minute. We have some of the most sophisticated radar on the planet. And you're telling me it takes months to figure out this is a remote drone? Give me a break.
Dog and pony, Chris.
It's
dog and pony.
All this is dog and pony. That's what I'm saying. It's a false flag operation, I think, setting us up for something down the pike. And it could be that this technology is going to break through and maybe use it, I don't know, in a war. I don't know.
I was speaking with Mario Woods. Anyone familiar with who he is? Mario Woods. He was at an IBC. What do they call what I'm trying to think of the name of the Nukes, the Minuteman. Basically, there was a UFO right over it. He ended up. It looked like a big sun when he was up to it. Anyway, they found him like 2:00 in the morning with the driver that was in the truck. They were both in security patrol. They found him like 14 miles away and down a road where a two-wheel drive would never dare to go, that type of thing. He got out, he was beside a van, he had no idea what happened, that type of situation. Anyway, so there were beings involved, that was coming up to the truck and all this. So he told me he was talking to the panel at AARO for 4.5 hours. Now, they didn't do, which I think is crazy, they didn't bring him there to talk. His testimony was all done through an audio phone. There wasn't even visual. He talks to them for 4 hours. He's telling them, he said they were very respectful. And then there's, I guess, Bob Salas did something similar and maybe a few others. But what I'm saying is, these people are testifying, however they're testifying, and then you get this report that comes out that says, there's nothing to see here. We're nothing, no extraterrestrial ideas, nothing, no proof or any of that. I understand there's no proof, but there's testimony. And that's all swept under the rug like it never happened.
Or worse, Martin, it's treated as something less than testimony, which really aggravates me. And I'm sure with the two professional law enforcement people here, they understand what I'm trailing.
Absolutely.
You go through that process, you record it, you do all the things that you had to do that makes it presentable in a court of law that you would put before someone who's going to make a judgment on it, and it's just dismissed. In that particular case that you're talking about, I think what it illustrates is that there are many competing agencies, activities, groups within government, the government industry part of it, that it's a cabal. It flows and it goes kind of with an inertia on its own. And this is why you have people that are, that are coming forward to come out with stuff instantly or almost within, you can set a clock to it. There's going to be something to make these people seem less credible than they present themselves to be. Or you will see people that are presented as highly credible, and one layer behind you find out none of this matches up to what they're saying. And any and all of these people could be speaking the truth, but you have to almost take this as faith-based in your determination. And I've said this before to all of you. I need nothing from the outside world to convince me of the existence of extraterrestrials, how that all fits into the universe, our role, all that kind of stuff. And as I've gotten older, I need less and less assurance on that. Would I love to know what is going on as much as everybody who's sitting on this panel with me today, as well as the people that sit in this audience? No doubt in my mind on that. But I think we are fighting against various groups that have no care whatsoever to what truth is, oath, honesty, honor, any of that stuff. Those are to use the major or correction Colonel Jessup from a Few Good Men. Those are punch words, fun things to say. It's not a code of life.
I was a young junior high school student.
I'd love to see the picture.
Yeah, I'll bet you would. When the Missiles of October event happened, okay, missiles, ICBMs in Cuba, 1962. And I can remember of course, the newspapers, news magazines were filled with nothing but stories about that. And my father at the time was activated. He expected to be landing in Cuba. Everybody did. Of course, JFK, President Kennedy, was the guy in charge. And everybody, I mean, it's the closest up to that point that we ever came to the genuine fear that nuclear conflict could happen. Well, I don't know about you guys, but today, because of current world events, all right, and the bellicose saber rattling by all parties involved, I think we could be there at that precipice right now, a nuclear precipice. And there are too many players right now that have their hands on nuclear technology that, quite frankly, scares hell out of me. And this all, believe it or not, wraps up into the UFO UAP conundrum. Okay. There are actors out there that if they had the capability, they would use it right now. Okay. If they thought they could get away with it. We could have right now rogue devices, nuclear devices already secreted in the continental United States because of the grossly criminal act of leaving our southern border open for almost 3 years. We have no idea, no conception of what came in there. We know that tons and tons and tons of lethal drugs have flowed into this country. It's called fentanyl. We have lost between 60 to almost 100,000 Americans using drugs that got that stuff, that ended up dying from it. So in a way, okay, it could be argued that we're already under attack by chemical weapons. That could be argued. And by God, I'd be more than willing to argue that point. But we don't know what's going to happen. And the idea of a nuclear hit on us, okay, quite frankly, if that were to happen, gentlemen, the game board would be turned over, the rules out the window, and it genuinely would be dog eat dog. Commander Cobra, what do you have to say about that?
I agree of the perilous situation that we're at. I thought possibly what you were tying into is that in the history of, and I couldn't carry your book bags, gentlemen, on your research into UFOs, UAPs. I am proud to say that I associate myself with you, but your scholarship far exceeds anything that I've done. But I do realize that in these extremely perilous times, there is a history within the UFO experience that seems to indicate various interferences that have occurred by extraterrestrials, for lack of any other better term to use, that has dampened it down. Missile silos that were shut down with the occasion going on. We always talk about Roswell and the incredible events of Roswell, which I tend to think probably is more the one that the most hallowed of events. The start point is probably not what it appears to be. But we very rarely talk about the activity of Roswell a short distance away, where UFOs were around atomic and nuclear facilities and information recorded. And there's been a number of events that have brought it down. And I also find it interesting, since you brought the name up earlier, considering the missiles of October and the Cuban Missile Crisis. John F. Kennedy's brother, Robert, played a key role in keeping everybody kind of calm on that. He was probably one of the strongest advocates to the then president to try to keep it from tipping over to the side of who's going to blink first, and blinking in a not good way, blinking in a way that was going to cause a huge exchange. And here we find out tonight that there is an NCAP kind of relationship that could be there. I find that an interesting how all this connects up. In the chat, I just wanted you to know I went and looked for the Mike Douglas show that you talked about. It's episode number 4, 231, I think, 1965. But here's the fun part. Every time I went to try to find an episode, a copy of that episode for you, my computer goes and kicks me out to saying it's not available, takes me to something else. So the very one about Major Kehoe that we were talking about earlier is not readily available on the World Wide Web of things, which, for an old timer like me.
Guess what? I've got that. I've got it.
I know you do, but you're not sharing. And this is Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving is a time.
Yeah, what's up with that?
I didn't know this was going to be a thing.
Add to the cornucopia of goodness that is our show. One other point. Yes, I do remember. I just want to let you know that I was 1 year old when this occurred. I don't get to say things like that very often these days, but when you were talking about you in your gym shorts at junior high, getting ready for duck and cover, I was in diapers, cloth diapers, I might add, at my age. Martin, you wanna join the crowd? I don't think you were born yet.
Oh yes, I was. I was 9 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, 9 years old. So
Chris?
I was under a desk. We were doing the duck and cover.
Oh yes,
and,
I was under the desk too.
Well, now that you learned, that's going to do a lot of good. Hey,
I know.
One question I want to
Chicken
ask the
soup,
group.
and we've had to bring it into school,
Yeah.
as if that would have helped. Yeah.
Has anybody heard of any reports of UFO? I mean, we've had reports in Iraq when the Iraqi war was going on.
I have been scouring it on our current event going on right now in the Israeli.
I haven't seen one. Have anybody seen any UFO reports in the Gaza Strip?
I have looked at every, from the what I call mainstream where this would show up to the most obscure areas.
Don't we find that unusual?
I find it very unusual.
I mean, because every war we've had, every conflict we've had UFOs show up.
Yes.
And not this one so far. And just like you, Commander, I've been looking for it, and I haven't found it.
I think another thing that's interesting that when you bring this up, that I kind of just a very loose left-handed theory that I have. When you have more and more devices that are recording, I tend to find there's less and less things caught. That it's unusual when we get it. I think that's what makes things like we were talking earlier about TikTok and some of the other things that were packaged in that. Martin and I spoke about that many years back, that things that were being packaged in there. One of those things that was there was absolutely not extraterrestrial. It was absolutely a man-made device. It was absolutely something, because I had seen it at another debriefing conference. I still can't really go into depth about that, but it was packaged in there with all the other goodies that were being sent out. Again, control of information, the left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing, or the sleight of hand deception to look in a different direction while something else is happening. All those things are at play. But I'm glad you brought it up, Chris, because this is it's chafing me something you can't imagine, that nothing, not even some crazy report. I'm waiting for at least someone that says that considering the part of the world, that the presence of divinity or biblical illusion is happening. Where people will see things in the clouds, you see it in the smoke, the apparitional forms. Nothing. It's all been very, very devoid of that, and it's really amazing to me.
What do you think, Martin?
The point that excuse me for just one moment, Martin, and I'll make this fast. The point that originally I was trying to get to, and Commander Cobra, I lost my way. Okay. But now I've circled back. I think I'm on the path again. With all of these horrible, chaotic, violent things that are happening right now, my question would be if some political actor decided to go ahead and utilize a nuclear device, would the UFO UAP entities allow that to happen? I think that's what you originally thought I was trying to get to. Am I correct?
Yes.
I think they'll just let us have at it. They didn't stop Hiroshima. I think they'll just let us make our own paths. I think they, from what you hear, that people have these visions or thoughts or whatever. They show, a massive destruction, but they never really, that's all they do. They just show, they don't say, this is how you prevent it or anything like that. You never hear about any of that. I don't know. It'd be nice. We have to fend for ourselves. It'd be nice if there could be an intervention, but I don't believe that. I believe that I believe it will just happen. And, it makes you wonder when you hear about these things showing up during wartime. I believe that I told the story that I knew about Vietnam on our very first episode, that really makes you wonder why they show up during these conflicts. And in many ways, there's the time travel theory that they're going back, having front row seats to events that were notable throughout time, or they're just curious in our tribal combating or whatever it is we're doing at the time. Anyone want to expand on any of that?
Well, yeah, there is something. When you just mentioned that, you thought they would perhaps just let us see how far we're willing to go to destroy humanity. A curious thought hit me back in the early 1950s as this UFO enigma just exploded across the world. And newspapers, contrary to popular belief today, newspapers carried stories of these sightings in all the major newspapers. New York Times, as hard as that may be to believe. Washington. I've got a JPEG of and I forget what newspaper it was. It might have been the Washington Examiner, where during the 1952 overflights, there was this headline, disc or UFO outruns jet chasing it, that kind of stuff. Well, something else curious happened then. A movement began called the contactee movement. People were coming forward. People like George Adamski, who was one of the most famous of contactees. Personally, I think the guy was a bullshit artist, but be that as it may, he was one of the main names that, and there were many others too, don't get me wrong, but they all had one enduring theme that they were trying to get out to the masses. And that was our space brothers. That was the term that was often used then. The space brothers really want us to do away with our nuclear weapons, because the whole universe can be affected by the use of these things. Those types of sermons that were emanating from these contactees. Now, that was not a good time to come out with that message, because immediately J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI went balls to the wall to track these people down. They were convinced they were Soviet spies, or at least working with Soviet spies, to convince the American public that nuclear weapons are bad. Now, in those days, guys, we were setting nukes off willy-nilly, above ground tests out at in Nevada. My God, I'm surprised the whole damn state isn't a sheet of broken glass with all the nukes they set off out there, and the Russians were setting them off willy-nilly. But later on, I became curious about something. The power of these devices is enormous. Most people don't have a conception of how devastating these things are. I mean, you've heard it. You've all heard it, that nuclear bombs are bad. Well, of course they are. But just how bad are they? Well, one of the curious things that popped up in my research is that it might be tearing holes, especially these bigger devices, in space-time. And we might be impacting on entities in another but very close dimension to us. These things might literally punch holes in dimensions. And some of these entities may in fact might not be from off-world, but from interdimensional sources. And I wanted to throw that out to see what you guys think. Martin, what do you say about that?
Well, I mean, that would make a lot of sense. I mean, it could make sense that it could affect another dimension for sure. I mean, that's one of the things that I have thought about, you know, why is this happening where there's not, say, interventions, but sort of like, okay, let's shut down a bunch of nuclear. There's some type of point, it seems to be made. Again, here I am thinking in human terms. I don't know what terms they're thinking, but still, why are these things shut down? I just have a little side note that I want to talk about at Dembski, because I think it's kind of a fun thing to hear. Years ago, I had a talk with Ray Stanford, and he has a twin brother, and him and his twin brother were at Giant Rock in the 60s, and was there. There was like 2,000 people there or something at the time. They got all done and everyone was gone, and they were hanging out, you know, to see if they could talk to George. And so George comes up to them everyone's basically gone, and, you know, it's like, what are you guys doing here, basically? And he says, look, he says, you two seem like nice fellows. You seem young. Get out. This is all a bunch of bullshit. That's what he told them back then. And I thought it was a great story. So I mentioned that I was contacted from someone that was making a documentary that belonged to the family. And I told them that story, and they said that they would sue me if I put it out there. I'll put it out there. Sue me. Yeah. Okay.
Chris?
You know, you're doing something right, Martin, when you get that kind of a call.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, I have interviewed tons of people who've claimed for abduction, and the ones I consider legitimate have the same story, Don, that they witness, you know, they don't witness a bomb going off. They don't witness, you know, an airplane strike or missile strike. What they witness is total devastation. Buildings on fire, buildings leveled to the ground, walking through absolute rubble. This process that they seem to get nightmare after nightmare of total devastation. And do I believe that we've broken some fabric with time, and that things are being accelerated? Yeah, absolutely. I think that they've been warning us for years that we're playing with power we don't really know can do. And we are absolutely got people who are so rogue, that are so hawkish, that they're dying to push a button. They're dying to see this atomic energy used for devastation. And I think this has been a warning to us. And, you know, thinking about, as we brought up the topic of why we haven't seen anything in Gaza, maybe this is it. Maybe they've been warning us, and they say, screw it. These guys aren't listening to us. We've been trying to tell them for years. We've been shutting off their stuff. We've been turning it on to scare them. We've been doing everything to get them to stop with this. And they're not listening. And maybe, just maybe, we're going to see some nuclear devastation, that those dreams are going to become reality. And we probably did cause some devastation interdimensionally.
Commander?
If you look at the classical timeline, if you look at this phenomena as a historical one, after the tests, after the World War II deployment of two atomic devices, and then the subsequent tests, there's a real large uptick in the reporting of UFO, UAP type phenomena. So I think it really lends itself very well, Don, to the theory or the concept that and I think we all agree, the interconnectivity of what our world and our dimension is, all the other things that are happening, it may be the signal on how it went. Something that happens on this planet with nuclear type materials detonating isn't even a pinprick compared to what suns and supernovas and other things in a galactic and larger space scope is. So if it was going to cause effect, it might cause attention. If you're being observed, you're going to see signals of that. But when you think about the interdimensionality portion of it, I think that really lends a lot of credence to why these activity levels come up around it and what has caused that. So I think it's a very workable thesis, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Now, I do want to pose one quick question. You used the expression "balls to the wall," and I want to get this clarified here. Do you know where that expression comes from?
Racquetball playing?
Well, the short answer is no.
Okay, good. That's a good way to go, because when the facial expression told me that you thought you knew what it was, and that's incorrect. What you were thinking on airplanes, especially leading up previous to the jet age, the throttles in an airplane, the handles that the pilot would use, have a round shape on them. That's so when you reach for them, or they would actually have like a spherical shape on them. So when you reached around in the dark, or if you weren't looking at the throttle quadrant and you needed to do something like an engine was causing problems and you wanted to add or subtract power from it, you wouldn't have to take your eyes off what you were looking at. You could reach over. And balls to the wall is when you would take the throttles of the aircraft, shove them forward to the firewall of the aircraft, which was generally the right in front of where the instrument panel. That's where that expression comes from.
Well, today was a learning experience.
And that's what Thanksgiving's about. We're all around, and you want to share. But I love seeing the facial expression of people when you use those expressions. And the other, there's countless ones like that, and everyone is, has a good theory, but generally doesn't always line up.
Well, the whole 9 yards comes from like a machine gun.
Yeah, the ammunition belt, unless of course you go back to the old Scottish, and that is dirty, and it has to do with something underneath the kilt.
Well, we went there.
Yeah. Well, I want to be as complete,
transparent as possible.
Yeah, we digress.
You put 9 yards of ammunition through a Browning 1917. Of course, it's got to be water cooled, but that would be a sight to see today, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
If we keep going the way we are, we're not going to worry about machine guns. We're going to worry about stones and sticks.
Yeah. Well, that's famously what Albert Einstein said. I can't tell you what the weapons will be in World War III, but I can tell you what they'll be using in World War IV. What's that? Sticks and stones.
Yeah. I saw a letter that he wrote that was trying to, I'm trying to remember, I'm going to get it all out of context, but it was actually a woman owned it in California, and it was basically begging, what's his name? Who was the president at the time?
FDR.
Who?
FDR and Truman, right?
It was Truman. He
Right.
was begging Truman not to go forward with using it as a weapon in the letter. It was really something.
Well, yeah, but Truman's response was absolutely on point. He said, "Look, the estimated casualties of Allied troops, not to mention Japanese civilians, would be astronomical if we have to invade." And there were as many estimated casualties on the Allied side as 1 million men. How in the hell could I explain that to the mothers of America if I had this weapon and I didn't use that weapon? And ultimately, he was correct, because believe it or not, as many as died in those 2 bombings, they saved literally millions of Japanese lives, and God only knows how many million Allied soldiers by doing that. My father, my very own father, was somebody that was slated to go to that invasion, as were anybody from that generation knows that all the troops in Europe after the war with the Nazis was complete were on their way to the West Coast. And it would have been horrible.
Well, just think of here, let's take that context of that time and put it in our time now with everybody having nukes. If everybody had nukes back then and we were the first to drop them, we would be casting stones and sticks, as you said. That's where it would be.
Martin, it's an interesting premise you put there, because you have to know what they're capable. You have to know if they work. And the thing that I found interesting about that letter, and I'd love to read the letter or get a synopsis of it, because Einstein did spend a lot of time when he was at Princeton telling FDR, you've got to get behind this research. The Germans are ahead of you on this capability, and you've got to try to harness this power. It's important. And I think rational people, Oppenheimer is a good example of it, when they realized what the capability was. But that is one of the pivotal events that changes the course of mankind on this planet at the end of World War II. Yes, the second weapon had to be dropped to complete the ability to break the Japanese home island defense, which would have been everyone able to walk would have been carrying some kind of a weapon, from a rock to a sword to a firearm. But it also was to set up the stage with now what we saw was the big problem with the then Soviet Union that was coming out, that we had this capability and we had to we needed to keep them in check. And that only lasted a very short time before their capability came out as well. And you could go through all the history there of spies and people that thought it was the right thing to do to share those secrets and all that stuff. All those are formative, foundational things that bring us to what we're, chatting about weekly, about how, because everything we talk about surrounds 2 major elements, right? It talks about the politics of the time we live in, and everything is politicized. And it talks about where our government and us connected to that government are at. We want to know, we want to be treated as by liberty and Freedom of Information Act. We want this stuff to come out. And a lot of the old guard expressions of why it's we shouldn't let it out, or the problems that could cause, as Don has indicated a number of times, take a look around. We're one step from the Star Wars bar at any given moment. I'm talking about the scene in the very first Star Wars when you walk into the bar. I mean, I actually feel more comfortable there than I do when I'm on some public transportation in major area right now. So,
hey, Commander, I got a question for you. Let's say the Russians didn't get the secrets to the atomic bomb. Do you think we would have used it on them?
It's hard for me to give you the scenario, but I think that some of their, if you look at the timeline, some of their aggression to build their defensive barrier in Eastern Europe and around the rest of the world probably would have slowed down. I think it would have slowed down.
Well, you see, now here's a perfect example of where the American academic institution has totally collapsed within themselves on this very topic. The sad fact and the dirty little secret about the Soviet Union's communism party is this. Joseph Stalin, who was the son of a bitch running that outfit then, okay, murdered more civilians than Hitler, Adolf Hitler, the leader of Nazi Germany, ever dreamed of.
Right.
Nobody talked about that. The New York Times, for God's sake, covered it up. Stalin systematically caused the entire Ukraine. You know that spot where they're busy killing each other right now? A famine that took the lives in the 1920s and early 30s of more than 20 plus million human beings. The dirty little secret that nobody talks about, that schools don't teach about. They don't teach about anything today. It's pure, well, I'm getting on a rant, but it's pure indoctrination. And it pisses me off. You will not believe how badly I am pissed off by this.
All right, so I'm going to say, since we're coming a little bit towards the end, I want to go around the room, and Don, you go last. What you're thankful for, because this is the Thanksgiving show. All right, I wrote this down. I'm very thankful for all of you, my co-hosts, because we've really become friends over the years, and I deeply appreciate the friendship and getting together to do this. I'm very thankful for the audience. I love the audience, KGRA, greatest on the planet. And I wanted to get that out and say how thankful I am that this show put off. And you guys have been so willing to work around my stupid schedule because it's tied to a lot of the craziness that's going on in the outside world. So now that we've had that, we go last on. Chris?
Well, I want to first of all be thankful to all the co-hosts on this show and our audience that watches this show. And I think it's an amazing show because one of the things I'm thankful for is that we can be honest on this show, throw out opinions, throw out discussions. We don't have to agree on this show. We can be true to ourselves and true
I think
to
the short
audience.
list, Chris, is when we do agree on the show. I think that's the short list.
Yeah, and that's what I'm very thankful about, that sometimes we don't agree and that we want to be able to question stuff, because then information gets out to our audience. I want to be thankful for people who are like-minded like all of you, because I think when we talk about UFOs or politics in this type of scenario, it makes people think. And if we make people think, maybe they won't want to hurt other people. We're in a very precarious times right now, and the UFO topic is part of it because we really don't know what their objective is. And if we can open people's minds and try to look at things like tearing of the universe or the nuclear warnings and things of that nature, maybe we can just reach certain people and say, yeah, we might want to take a step back. So I'm thankful for all you guys and the dedication you do to bring to this subject.
Yeah, what they said. No, I'm really thankful for the show, for the conversation, very engaging conversation. I like the little bit of the humor that shows up now and then on this as we're all talking. I think it's a good dynamic. I'm feeling that. I'm thankful. I have to say, in a personal level, I'm very thankful to be alive. You know, when you go through health issues and you get through them and you're on the other side, it makes you appreciate things a lot more. So I'm thankful for the great, medical care that's out there that we have available to us, that not everybody has in this world available to them. I wouldn't be here if I was in some third world country or something like that. So I'm thankful for all that. And I'm thankful for this country. We have a lot of pathetic and pitiful things seem to happen in this country that we're involved in, but I'm still thankful for it. I'm thankful for the freedom that we have, and for the people that help us, protect that freedom. And that's good enough for me.
Well said.
Well said.
Okay, I guess.
Wait. And the producer wants to thank all of you gentlemen for doing this show. And I want to thank all the people that are viewing and listening to the show, the audience, for their support for KGRA and for, of course, UAP Crossfire. So I want to thank all four of you gentlemen. Take the time to do this every week.
Thank you. Now it's you, Don.
Okay, first and foremost.
Is that the Wizard of Oz? First of all.
Yes, that is the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Pay no attention, like we normally don't.
I want to thank my wife and my family. Okay, first and foremost. I literally would not be here today if it weren't for my wife, Vicky. She is she's the star that I am in pursuit of, has been our entire time together, which is 35 years now. And I thank God every day for her. I truly do. Now, with that being said, I am also thankful that I had the opportunity to wear the uniform of this nation. I thank God, even though I had some very bad times during that period, I thank God that I could do my part in securing what I thought at the time was liberty for another people. Ultimately, that fell through, but that's just for another meal. I thank KGRA. This is not my first excursion with KGRA DB. Several years ago, I had a show on Dark Matters Radio, same title, but I had been in an accident where I fractured a vertebrae. It was excruciating, and I had to step back from it. But thankfully, they thought enough of me that they brought me back. And I love Bill Skywatcher. I genuinely do. Gentlemen, I love you too. And the best of the holiday season. It is truly a pleasure to get together with you fellas every week to do this program. And I'm very, very thankful for that. And finally, may God bless the United States of America, because if there's ever been a time when it needed God's blessing, it would be right. Today.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. I'm thankful for your jack-o'-lantern making, Vicky, as well.
Yeah, she's over there working on it right now. Do you see it? Let's see.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
see
there she is.
Wait, here she comes.
Could do the headless horseman.
All right.
Guys, I just want to say one more thing for a blessing, because I want to make sure this is clear to the audience. I want to say a little prayer for these Americans that are overseas right now in Iraq, Syria, because as we're talking right now, making this show, news flashes that they're under attack, missile attack, drone attack right now. And there's been more than 27 attacks on them that our government is keeping quiet, and there have been a lot of injuries. I haven't seen anybody killed yet, but the soldiers are now starting to die. Israeli soldiers, there's over 300 that have been killed. And so our troops are right in the crossfire of all this. And one, I want to say thank you to every serviceman that's ever put on that uniform, because it takes a lot to do that. And number two, a prayer to these guys that are over there right now, because they're going to need it.
Well, as somebody that's been under missile and artillery bombardment, and you truly cannot understand it until you've experienced it. I realize that sounds trite, but it's a God-given fact.
It's not.
But, gentlemen, unfortunately, our time has run out. So, until next time, ladies and gentlemen of the KGRA DB audience, the best of the holiday season to you. And God willing, and the river doesn't rise too high, we'll be back in the next week. God bless.